in the drum rack here, just so we've got a wee bit more control of it. So we've got a basic sampler here. Let's go back to our files. We've got our sounds here. So there's the different sounds that we're going to use to build this. I've just gone through various different sample packs and things like that and found various different sounds that I think will work. Feel free to have a look, for your own sounds, to stick your own beat together. But I'll talk you through why I kind of picked some of these sounds as I kind of pull them out. Okay, so let's look at the kick first. So I'm going to drag this in, just our basic sampler here. I'm going to take the volume up a wee bit as well. So we've got our basic kick in here. Like so. Let's turn the release up on that, and we're going to leave that just as it is at the moment. What I'm going to do later on is maybe have a look at filtering or EQing this a wee bit, just to kind of take some of the boom out of it once we get our main kind of respace in. But at the moment, we're just going to leave it as it is. And what I've also done here is put in a couple of MIDI files, and I'll kind of save more of these as we kind of move along and drop them into this folder. So we've got kick pattern MIDI file here, so I can drag that in, and you can have a look at it. It's a pretty standard kind of kick drum pattern. I'm just going to move that up to C3 because that's where our root sample is within the sampler, and it's a pretty standard kick drum pattern, just with an extra wee kick put in here. So I'm just going to play that so you can hear it. Like so. You can see whenever I drag that in, it then set the tempo for me. So this is 170 BPM that we're playing at now. So that's a nice kind of drum and bass tempo. You might want to push that a wee bit higher than that, but probably not lower than that, I wouldn't have thought. So our standard kind of kick drum pattern, if I turn the click on here so you've got some kind of reference, you can hear what that sounds like. Like so. So the only thing I'm going to do is go back in here and just add a bit of velocity to that, because you can see in the MIDI clip here, I've sequenced just basic kind of kick pattern to give us a real standard drum and bass kick beat, but I've pulled the velocity right down on that beat. So we want to add quite a big chunk of velocity then to that sample. Like so. So we're getting much less of a hit on that note. I might want to pull that up just a tiny wee bit. Whoops. So it's just pulling that note, it's sort of a lead-in note to the main kick that's coming in on two there. Just adds an extra rhythm to it. And that'll come more into play once we drop our kind of percussion and stuff on top of it. You'll also hear that as I kind of push that up, it's just giving you more of a kind of punch. It's kind of hitting that kick drum much harder and giving it more of a punch in the mix with the drum and bass. That's exactly what we want, So I'll pull that down. Like so. Okay, so that's our kick sorted. Obviously, feel free to make your own kind of variation on that. I'm just going to create something that's fairly kind of straightforward. Next thing we're going to do is start to fill up our perc machine here, but I've got a loop for that as well. I'm going to drag that in too, just so you can see the pattern that I've created here for that particular sample, or that particular set of samples. So we're going to drop in our hi-hat, our ride, our snare, and our white noise. So I'm going to start with the snare. And I'm going to drop that into C1. Let's go in there and we can boost that volume up again a wee bit. Like so. So I'm going to turn the release and decay up on that as well. So that's grand. We don't really need to do anything more to that at the moment. because it's not, this here's our MIDI clip here, or snare here. It's just a basic 2 and 4 pattern, just then syncing up with that kick drum, and that should become kind of instantly recognizable for people that are interested in drum and bass or listen to a lot of drum and bass. The only thing I've done here is just pull that ever so slightly off the beat there, just to give it a wee bit more swing. Next then is this sound, which is our white noise sound. And I'm going to drop that in the slot next door. If we look at our MIDI clip, we've got exactly the same rhythms coming in on that white noise sample. We've got a slightly shorter sample, so I need to affect this a wee bit. And what we want to do is just to add a wee bit of noise and a bit of kind of top end to that snare, just kind of fill it out and make it a wee bit kind of brighter in the mix. And this is a really good way to do it. This white noise just came from the Ana synth, any synth really at all, and all I did was just sequence one note and just played it and resampled it, and that's where that white noise came from. You'll be able to get that out of any synth at all, and just do exactly the same thing. Just either record it and freeze it, or resample it and just drag it into the samples folder here. So that's where that comes from. I'm just going to take some of the bottom end off it. Let's just change that. Okay, so I'm going to turn the volume up a bit, and we're going to take some of the lower end on that and just make it a really top endy sound. So let's solo that up. We can hear what's going on there. You can hear when I turn that on and off that you're getting a real kind of brightness and a wee bit of sort of an aggressive brightness, because it's the noise sitting on top of that snare now, kind of really filling that out. Okay, so that's our snare and our white noise. Next one we're going to look at then is our ride sound here. So our ride sound is going to sit into D1. I drag that in like so. So let's turn the volume up on that a wee bit as well. Let's turn the release up as well. And let's put a wee bit of a high pass on that too, just to take some of those bottom end frequencies off. So you want something that's quite thin, but also something that's quite sort of jazzy as well, which works quite well with drum and bass. And we're turning the release up a bit, so it creates a almost like wash of ride kind of coming through the mix. If we look at the actual MIDI on it here, it's you're getting 2 per beat, so it's every 8th note that's playing on. I've pulled the velocity down on this as well. If I just highlight those notes, you can see that the velocity is kind of pulled down, but you're getting just one that's kind of nudging through here on the 3rd beat of each bar, just to give it a wee bit of slightly different rhythmical emphasis. So I'll play that, and I'm going to take the velocity up here so you can kind of hear what's going on. So you get that nice wee rhythmical emphasis just coming through on those beats. You can see that the velocity is just ever so slightly higher there. So what I did was just highlight all of them, pull the velocity down for everything, and then just nudge that beat back up again individually just by selecting each individual note. You can then move the velocity up like so, just to give that a wee bit of rhythmical emphasis on a different beat than the rhythms of the snare are on. So you've got the snare on the 2 and the 4, the 2 and the 4, but then this is a bit of rhythmical emphasis coming through on the third beat of each bar there, because unlike house music you don't have kick drums on each one, so you've got a bit of rhythmical space on beat number 3 there where you can kind of punch something through. So you've got something on on beat 1 and beat with the kick drum you've got one on beat 1 of each one of the bars, and with the snares you've got 2 and 4, so you've kind of got a wee bit of space there where you can just kind of nudge something through. So just nudging through a wee bit of that ride, sort of works quite well. Like so. And last but certainly not least is this little hi-hat that we've got here. So we're going to pull that down into D sharp 1. Let's nudge that volume up a wee bit on that too, and let's solo it. Like so. So I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to get rid of some of that bottom end. Just push the resolution up a wee bit. Now, and just by tweaking the release, taking the release and the sustain down, but turning that decay volume up a bit, or that decay time, sorry, up a bit, then we can get a really tight kind of hi-hat sound. And you can use that sustain volume to leave some of the tail in there a wee bit, or just strip it right out if you want. And then if we go back in here and have a look, we've got a pattern sequenced here that's just every beat, or every half beat the same as the ride, but we've just got some additional rhythms here in and around that third beat there, and we've got an additional rhythm in there just before the third as well, and then one towards the end to give you a slightly kind of different pattern, and those have been kind of tweaked a wee bit, that those additional rhythms that we've got there and there, and these ones there and there, those 4 additional rhythms have then just been pulled back as far as the velocity is concerned, so we can go in there and kind of push the velocity a bit on that. Let's take our volume back down. Like so. Let's drop that in then with everything else. Like so. So what I'm going to do is just grab both of these, and let's just kind of pull them back a wee bit, because we're kind of peeking over to the red here. And I'm just going to pull the volumes of the 2 cymbals down there. I'm just swapping or moving the pans left and right here as well to kind of give these 2 a wee bit of space. Okay, so that's our basic drum and bass beat. In the next one, we're going to add some percussion loops on top of this to fill it out. All right, I'll see you then.